Welcome back to another Film Geek video. Today I am ranking the Underworld films from my favorite to least favorite film in the franchise. Now, full disclaimer on this series, okay guys? I did not know that there was 5 films. Had no idea. Now, I was aware of the first 2 movies, Underworld and Underworld Evolution. I saw both of those films in theaters. And then Rise of the Lycans came out, and I lost interest in the series, mostly because Rise of the Lycans is a prequel. And as I've said before, guys, and I'm going to eat a little crow in this one, but I'm not a big fan of prequels. I don't see the point of a prequel film, especially if you're going back and telling a story that you've already explained in the film that really doesn't need any more context than you've already given it. It doesn't seem like there's a point to it. Also, the film feels like it has no stakes whatsoever, especially if the characters in the film appear in the next movie, so you know they're going to be okay. So anytime those characters get into any kind of situation where you might be a little stressed out or something, you're not, because you're like, oh, wait a minute, this is before the other movie, so we know that he's going to be just fine. And it kind of bothers me, so I've never been a massive fan of the prequel series. So as I was saying, I was completely unaware that there were 5 movies in this series until last month when I was doing my unboxing for Loved Again Media, and I got a hold of a copy of Underworld Awakening. Imagine my surprise when the very first thing I pull out of that box is a movie that I didn't know existed. I was kind of surprised, and then it got me curious. Are there more movies in this franchise? And so I went out and bought a copy of Underworld Blood Wars and said, you know what? Let's do a video on this, alright? So I sat down and watched all 5 movies, and I watched them in such a way that would give me kind of a clear idea of how these films work together. I watched the Kate Beckinsale movies all together in one line, and then I watched Rise of the Lycans by itself after I watched the 4 movies in what I'm going to call the Prime storyline. And you know what, guys? It gives me a different perspective on these films, the way I sat down and watched them, and I did enjoy them. Now, this is complete and absolute action, horror, popcorn, fluff cinema. This is not super quality cinema, okay, guys? This is just a lot of fun. If this was anything, it's basically horror movie superhero type stuff, okay? That's what this movie is, or these movies are. They tell the ongoing story of the war between werewolves and vampires, and more importantly, they're always looking for somebody in these movies. Okay guys, it's time for me to head on over to that series of tubes that we like to call the internet, because it is time for me to rank the Underworld films from favorite to least favorite in the franchise. Welcome to the digital world, everybody! Before we teleported over, I actually ran and grabbed myself another beer because this could be a while. I got thoughts, man. I got stuff I want to talk about. Let's get this started, shall we? We shall. Alright, so let's get started with my all-time favorite movie in the series. And this is where I'm going to be eating crow, because you know what my favorite one actually ended up being was Rise of the Lycans, the prequel. Okay, so I think the reason why I enjoyed this movie so much was, alright, I'll be completely honest with you, I like the fantasy elements of this film a lot more. I like the swords and the hand-to-hand fighting. It was a lot more exciting than just blowing up a bunch of, with guns and bombs and shooting and things of that sort. It had a lot more finesse and fun to the action in the film. And to be perfectly honest, even for a story that I knew exactly what was going to happen, I really enjoyed watching this movie unfold in front of my eyes. It really felt like this is where the series should have started. It would have given, the main character, the main villain. I guess you wouldn't really call him the villain of Underworld, Lucius. He was more of the misunderstood villain of the film. It gave him so much more depth and personality because you didn't really get to spend a lot of time with him. He was a good, again, misunderstood villain for the film franchise, but you didn't get enough time with him. So this way, you would have gotten plenty of background story of the world building and things of that sort, and then we could have rolled into the next movie. But that is not my number 2. Okay, so The reasons I like it, like I said, the action is on point in this one. I like the acting, I like the characters. Even though I knew certain things were going to happen, the stakes still felt like there was something there. So, anything could possibly happen to some of the people because you didn't know who they were. But again, like I said, the familiar characters, yes, you did know they were going to be fine, but it didn't seem to weigh the movie down. And the reason why I think this movie is my favorite is it kind of sets itself aside from all the other movies. All of the other films seem to kind of build to something else near the end of the movie. They start to show you that there's going to be something else in the film series. This one is a one and done by itself kind of movie, and I like that about it. And again, with the medieval and the swords and the hand-to-hand fighting and all, it really makes it the movie that I'm probably going to sit down and watch the most in the series. And so that's why I've placed it at my number 1. Moving on to number 2, I'm actually going to put that as Underworld Evolution. I did really like Underworld Evolution a lot more than the first film. In this one, we get to see Scott Speedman's character, the hybrid werewolf vampire creature, finally unleash and show his true potential in this film. I mean, we get to see him do some real serious damage to what is thought to be the very first werewolf. He literally rips the thing's head wide open. The movie is a lot of fun, and it just doesn't seem like the action in this film lets up whatsoever. Now, it is kind of a trend in these movies that they like to tell you what happened in the previous film, so honestly, in my opinion, you really don't need to see a lot of the other movies in the series if you just want to watch one of them. And one of them that's kind of what I would again call story prime. This is probably the one that you would want to see. Like I said, the action never stops in this movie. It picks up pretty much right after the first movie. It does give you background, so again, if you haven't seen the first film, it kind of catches you up. Not a problem whatsoever. There's not a lot of stuff in these films. Yes, there is some serious world building that goes on throughout the films, but it's not that hard to follow. I mean, like I said, every one of these movies does a previously on at the beginning of the film, and it does not take a lot of time to wrap things up each time. So the second film, Evolution, great action. You get to see more of what our hybrid character is capable of doing, because in the first movie, and that's what kind of annoyed me about the first one, he never really get to see him do anything until the very end, and by that time, he's not really at his full power, he's trying, he tries to show off the full powers and so on and so forth, but he's still new at it. But in this one, we really get to see where this guy is capable of doing, and it's pretty awesome. It is bloody, it's gory, the special effects, actually just going to say it right now, the special effects in all of these films are pretty solid. The CGI is of its time, but it's still fairly solid for its time period. It does look pretty good. You can tell it's CGI, don't get me wrong, so you're just going to have to live with that. But again, remember, these are early 2000 movies. Well, 3 of them are. And so, give it a little bit of leeway on the CGI, especially when it comes to the werewolf slash lichens. I forgot to say that too. They're not called werewolves in this series. They call them lichens. Hence, Rise of the Lycans. I probably should have said something about that in the beginning. Oh well, moving on to number 3 in the series. Number 3 is actually going to be number 1, Underworld. This movie is fun. It sets up the world. It is definitely a very fun action horror film. There's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of action. There's a lot of fraction. There's a lot of different things going on. All sorts of different characters. If you're a person who loves the whole idea of vampires versus werewolf, this really is the franchise for you. And this film is solid. It is a good beginning, but it's not, in my opinion, the best of the mix. I still stand by my Rise of the Lycans and Evolution being the 2 better films in the series than the first film. But this one does a good job of getting you in there, letting you know what this world is all about, setting the stage, and getting the ball rolling with all the lore and all. It does do a great job in that. There's some awesome action sequences in this film. And again, the gore and blood is on point, and the special effects and CGI are fairly solid for its time. All in all, guys, this is a very fun, solid popcorn horror film at its core, and that's really all it is. Next up on the list is going to be Underworld Awakening. Now, this movie is kind of weird to me, because in this film, the movie opens up with explaining the background like they normally do, but then it also goes into a little bit of a different direction. Instead of the Lycans and the vampires being kind of like their own race, in this film, they're an actual, like, I guess you could say virus, that people were infected. Some people became Lycans, some people became vampires. So humans decided to have a purge and kill off all of the vampires and werewolves. Well, they don't get everybody, but they get a good portion of them. So our movie opens up with Scott Speedman. Well, we have what looks like Scott Speedman and Kate Beckinsale escaping from, or no, I'm sorry, excuse me, they're getting captured by the government. Or it looks like they're getting hunted. We find out that they're being captured by the government. When she awakens, she finds that Michael, Scott Speedman's character, has been taken from her, and so she's searching for him. She also finds, lo and behold, she had a daughter. Now, it's up in the air on how she had the daughter, whether or not it was just kind of like a clone or whatnot, because she was, comatose for a while. But our main character has a daughter, and she is just like her father, Michael, who is a hybrid. She's both vampire and Lycan, so she's quite a powerful little thing. And I liked where the series was going at this point. I'm like, okay, well, if we're not going to get Michael in the series, at least we're getting somebody else to carry it on. This is going to be going in a new direction for our main character. We're going to see her more motherly side coming out in her, and it's going to build more on this for the series, possibly bringing in a new character that's going to carry the series on further. Nope, that brought me to my least favorite right here, Blood Wars. Now, Blood Wars isn't terrible, but it is definitely my least favorite movie in the series because it is just kind of a muddled mess. It tries to pick up where everything left off in the previous film, but in this movie, come to find out how her daughter's gone. We don't know why. Her daughter just says, I don't want any part of this anymore. I'm sick of this war. I'm sick of all of this. I'm going and doing my own thing. Boom. Gone. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. Now they're searching for her daughter, or not trying. Well, no, they are searching for her daughter because another group of evil Lycans are trying to find her so they could get her blood and create another hybrid vampire werewolf. Blood Wars. Yes, that's the title. So yeah, that movie, it's not very solid. This is definitely where the budget got cut. The special effects are really starting. I think this one came out in 2018 and it does not look good. I do not know, honestly, if this film was released in theaters. I would not be surprised if this was a direct to like VOD or Blu-ray, because it just does not look that good. It is really one of the ugliest ones of the entire series. It's still fun. I mean, in no way, shape, or form is this an unwatchable mess, but it's definitely the weakest film in the series. There's also questions that I've never been able to get answered throughout the entire series when it comes to vampires, and that is how they're able to have children in this world. Apparently, vampires are able to father and mother children, and also able to turn people into vampires, but they never really explain any of that. You're just, it's just something they just go with, and you're like, okay, sure, we'll just keep going with that, whatever. So that was just, I don't know, that always bothers me through the series. But all in all, really, the series is fun. Everything about these is just, again, total, absolute popcorn fluff from beginning to end, but you're going to get a good time and a little bit of enjoyment out of these movies. Well, alright guys, well there you have it, the complete ranking of the Underworld series from my favorite to least favorite. I hope that we all learned something today. Alright guys, well thanks again for checking out the Film Geek. If you liked what you saw here today, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, ring that bell for notifications, and give me the old thumbs up if you like what you're seeing. And if there's one more thing you can do, folks, that is keep watching movies. You know I'm gonna.